The silent stone giants of Easter Island guard a deeper secret, carved not from rock but from wood. A library of strange symbols sits waiting. This is the Rongorongo script, one of the last great undeciphered writing systems on Earth. For over 150 years, this puzzle has resisted every expert who tried to crack it. By the end of this, you will understand why this ancient code is so stubborn, and the dramatic quest to finally hear its lost stories. We will uncover how it was found too late, explore theories linking it to birdmen and calendars, and see how modern technology offers new hope. What does it take to decipher a message when the writers, the language, and the key are all gone? The mystery arrived on a bishop's desk wrapped in a simple package. In the late 1860s, a French missionary stationed in Tahiti, Bishop Florentin Etienne Jawson, received an unusual gift from a colleague visiting Easter Island. It was a long cord carefully bound in a sheet of bark cloth, but this was no ordinary wrapping paper. The inner surface of that bark cloth was covered from edge to edge with hundreds of finely carved, intricate symbols. Birds, human figures, plants, and geometric shapes all flowed together in a precise, ordered sequence. Bishop Jawson immediately recognized this was writing, a sophisticated system completely unknown to the outside world. He was holding a text, but one he could not begin to understand. His fascination became an obsession, and he began a frantic effort to collect more of these inscribed artifacts. Soon, other wooden tablets and ceremonial staffs were sent to him, each covered in the same baffling script. This was the Western world's formal introduction to Rongorongo. Yet in that moment of discovery lay the core of the tragedy. By the time Bishop Jawson's eyes fell upon those glyphs, the people who could read them were almost entirely gone. The true key had already been lost. In the early 19th century, Easter Island society had been shattered. Peruvian slave raids in the 1860s had kidnapped or killed thousands, including, historians believe, the last of the island's literate elite, the learned men who held the script's secrets. Devastating epidemics followed, decimating the remaining population. The cultural chain was broken, so when scholars arrived with their notebooks eager to learn, they found only the silent artifacts. The tablets were not just ancient, they were orphaned, separated forever from the voices and minds that gave them meaning. We had found the library, but someone had burned all the dictionaries and silenced all the librarians. The glyphs themselves are a mesmerizing gallery of island life and imagination. To our modern eyes, they look like an elegant, cryptic art form. We see stylized human figures in postures of prayer or dance, often with elaborate headdresses. We see the island's rich wildlife captured in clean, flowing lines, frigate birds with their distinctive forked tails, fish, turtles, and even what appear to be mythical composite creatures. There are recognizable plants like the sweet potato, a vital crop, and symbols for celestial bodies, perhaps the sun, moon, or stars. Interspersed among these are abstract geometric shapes, crescents, dots, and zigzag lines that likely served as punctuation or modifiers. This isn't haphazard scratching. Every glyph is carefully composed, suggesting a script developed over generations for a serious, formal purpose. But the true genius and the major hurdle for decipherment lies in how these beautiful symbols are arranged on the wooden tablets. The text is written in a method scholars call reverse boustrophedon. That's a complex term for a simple yet brilliant idea. Imagine an ox plowing a field. It goes left to right across one row, then turns around and plows right to left on the next. Rongorongo works the same way, but with a twist. You read the first line left to right, but when you reach the end, you don't just drop your eyes to the next line. You physically flip the entire tablet 180 degrees to continue reading. The glyphs on the next line are also upside down relative to the first. This alternating, flipping pattern continues all the way down the tablet. It's an incredibly efficient use of space, but it means a single tablet presents 4 different orientations to a modern researcher, a dizzying puzzle before you even try to understand a single symbol. The aesthetic beauty is undeniable, each tablet a masterpiece of woodcraft and design. This level of formality points away from casual record-keeping. These were likely sacred texts recited by trained chanters during important ceremonies, their very presentation as much a part of the ritual as the words themselves. We are looking at the hymn books of a lost religion, but we cannot hear the music. Out of that silent library, only a precious few volumes remain. Today, the entire known corpus of authentic Rongorongo fits into a single, heartbreakingly small collection. Scholars have identified just about 25 objects worldwide that bear the true script, scattered in museums from Rome to Santiago to Washington, D.C. Each has been given a name, often for the place it was found or its distinctive shape. The Tahua tablet, sometimes called the oar for its long, slender form, is one of the largest and most complete. The Mamre tablet is famous for a sequence of glyphs that many believe represents a lunar calendar, a repeating cycle of 28 symbols that might have tracked the phases of the moon. Then there are the staffs, like the imposing Arucucuringa and the smaller Santiago staff, objects of authority that were likely carried during rituals. And perhaps the most magnificent of all, the Great Santiago tablet, a massive wooden plank covered in over 2,000 glyphs, a potential epic frozen in time. These names are all we have, labels on a handful of survivors. The tragedy is how much was lost. In the cultural collapse that followed European contact, many tablets were simply burned as firewood by people who no longer understood their sacred value. Others, carved from precious native Toromiro wood, were repurposed or left to rot in caves, crumbling away from moisture and insects. Each artifact that survived this period of oblivion is a miracle, a fragile piece of a puzzle where we are missing most of the pieces. Their very scarcity makes every scratch, every worn edge, exponentially more precious. They are not just artifacts, they are refugees. Faced with these beautiful, baffling glyphs, the first wave of scholars did what humans do best: they searched for a familiar pattern. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the academic world was captivated by grand theories of ancient contact. The prevailing idea was diffusion, that all major inventions, including writing, had a single point of origin and spread outward. So when experts looked at Rongorongo, they didn't see a unique Polynesian creation, they saw an echo of something they already knew. The symbols looked vaguely pictorial, reminiscent of Egyptian hieroglyphs, so perhaps ancient Egyptians or Phoenicians had sailed across the Pacific and taught the islanders to write. Others saw similarities in the angular shapes of the ancient Indus Valley script from present-day Pakistan and India, proposing a lost maritime link across the Indian Ocean. More fantastical thinkers pointed to legends of sunken continents like Mu or Lemuria, suggesting Rongorongo was a surviving fragment of a drowned civilization's language. These theories were seductive, offering a neat solution to a profound mystery. They placed Easter Island within a grand, interconnected ancient world, a romantic notion that captured the public imagination. But they suffered from a critical flaw. They started with the answer and tried to force the evidence to fit. Researchers would pick a glyph that looked like a bird in both Rongorongo and, say, Egyptian writing, and declare a connection, ignoring the vastly different cultural contexts and the thousands of miles of open ocean in between. They were trying to read the text by using a dictionary from another planet. This approach fundamentally misunderstood the genius of human innovation. Isolated on the most remote inhabited island on Earth, the Rapa Nui people had already achieved the monumental feat of building and moving the moe. Was it so impossible that they, too, had independently stumbled upon the concept of recording language in symbols? The diffusionist theories, while ambitious, slowly crumbled under their own weight. They could not explain the script's unique structure. its clear references to local plants and animals, or its perfect adaptation to the available materials like wood and obsidian. The search for a foreign key had hit a dead end, forcing a humbling but necessary realization. To understand Rongorongo, one had to start not in Egypt or the Indus Valley, but on the windswept shores of Easter Island itself. If the script wasn't born in Egypt or a sunken continent, where did it come from? The island's own stories whisper a different origin. According to the foundational oral histories passed down for generations, the great Polynesian voyager and founding chief Hatu Mata arrived on Easter Island's shores with more than just people and plants. Some traditions insist his canoes carried the sacred knowledge of writing itself. This legend plants the idea that Rongorongo was not a late invention but a core part of the island's identity from its very beginning, a treasure brought across the vast Pacific. Yet other stories complicate this neat narrative. Alternate accounts suggest the script arrived later, brought by a second wave of visitors, perhaps lost navigators who shared this technology before sailing away. These competing traditions create a fascinating puzzle within a puzzle. Did Rongorongo emerge fully formed from the original migration, or was it a later spark of cultural exchange that the islanders then mastered and made their own? The answer may lie not in when it arrived, but in how it was used. In the early 20th century, a few dedicated researchers managed to speak with the last elders who held fragments of the old knowledge. In these precious interviews, a crucial term emerged: the Tangata Rongorongo. These were the Rongorongo men, a special class of learned individuals. They were not scribes in the way we think of them, sitting and writing letters. They were chanters, priests, and historians. Their skill was not in silently reading the glyphs, but in using them to perform. A Tangata Rongorongo would look upon a tablet, see the sequence of symbols, and it would trigger the memorized words of a sacred chant, a lineage of chiefs stretching back to the gods, or the epic story of the island's creation. The tablet was a prompt, a sophisticated set of notes for a vast oral performance. This explains so much about why decipherment has been so impossibly difficult. We have been searching for a phonetic code where each symbol equals a sound or a syllable like our alphabet. But what if the glyphs work more like a flowchart for a song? A bird symbol might not mean bird. It might represent an entire stanza about a legendary voyage or the name of an ancestor associated with that creature. The frigate bird glyph could cue a chant about navigation, while a sweet potato plant might recall a story about the first harvest. The writing system was a memory palace carved in wood, designed to be heard, not read silently. This means the true meaning was never fully contained in the glyphs alone. It lived in the mind and voice of the chanter. When the last Tangata Rongorongo died, the music truly stopped, leaving behind only the silent sheet music. This leaves us with a haunting question. If the glyphs are prompts for chants, is any real translation even possible? One determined scholar in the 1990s believed he had found a way in, not through the words but through the rhythm. Linguist Stephen Roger Fisher turned his attention to one specific artifact, the memory tablet. Unlike others who searched for a hidden language, Fisher looked for patterns, the mathematical heartbeat of the script. And on the memory, he found a compelling one, a sequence of glyphs that repeated in a clear, predictable cycle. To Fisher, this wasn't poetry, it was a calendar. He proposed that the memory tablet recorded a sophisticated lunar solar calendar used to track time for agriculture and rituals. Each glyph in the repeating sequence, he argued, corresponded to a specific night in the lunar month or marked an important ceremonial day. His interpretation was bold and in parts controversial. He identified certain human figure glyphs not as ancestors, but as explicit representations of phallic fertility rites, connecting the calendar directly to the island's most vital concern, ensuring the growth of crops and the continuation of the people. This theory, often called the phallic calendar hypothesis, caused a stir. It gained significant traction because it was specific and testable. Fisher wasn't just saying the tablet was about time. He was showing a repeating structure that looked deliberate, like a carved metronome. For the first time, someone had proposed a concrete, functional explanation for at least one tablet's purpose that seemed to align with the island's known preoccupations with survival and ritual. Yet for all its influence, the theory's limitations are profound. Even if Fisher is correct about the memory, he has not deciphered the Rongorongo script. He has suggested a possible use for one set of symbols on one tablet. He cannot tell us what the Rapa Nui called the moon, or the name of the ritual, or the story chanted on the night of the full moon. He has identified what might be the clock's ticking mechanism, but we still cannot hear the chimes. It is a breakthrough in understanding function, but not meaning, a map of the calendar's grid with all the holidays left blank. This is the frustrating essence of the puzzle. We can sometimes see the structure, but the soul of the message remains locked away, reminding us that a calendar without its culture is just a list of empty boxes. But a calendar is just one possible key in a lock with many tumblers. The challenge of Rongorongo is not a single mystery, but a perfect storm of obstacles, each one making the others more formidable. The first is a problem of sheer quantity, known as the closed corpus. In cryptography, you need a large enough sample of text to find patterns, repetitions, and frequencies. The Rosetta Stone for Egyptian hieroglyphs had extensive text in 3 scripts. The Mayan glyphs were found on thousands of monuments and pottery shards. Rongorongo offers us only about 25 objects, with many damaged or incomplete. This is like trying to learn English, its grammar, and its entire literature from a few weathered pages torn from a single book. There simply isn't enough data to run the complex statistical analyses that cracked other ancient codes. The second obstacle is the most famous one, the lack of a Rosetta Stone. There is no bilingual text, no handy translation of a known phrase into Rongorongo. No artifact has been found with a parallel inscription in, say, Spanish or Tahitian from the early contact period. We have no starting point, no anchor phrase like king or temple to build from. We are staring at the code without the cipher. Third, we don't even know for certain what language the script is recording. Was it writing down Old Rapa Nui, the ancestral Polynesian language spoken on the island before European contact? Linguists have partially reconstructed this language from modern Rapa Nui and related Polynesian tongues, but it's an approximation. Even more perplexing, some experts suggest Rongorongo may not encode everyday speech at all, but a specialized ritual or priestly language, a secret dialect used only for chants and ceremonies. This would be like trying to decipher Latin church hymns using only a modern Italian dictionary. You might recognize a root word, but the sacred context and archaic phrasing would remain a fog. Fourth, the very nature of the symbols is a deep unknown. Are they logograms where one intricate bird glyph stands for an entire word or concept like voyage or ancestor? Or are they syllabic where each symbol represents a sound like pa or ko, which combine to form words? It could be a mixed system like Japanese using both. Without a key, we cannot even begin to guess the basic rules of the game. Finally, and perhaps most crucially, the cultural context is shattered. When Linear B, the script of the ancient Mycenaeans, was deciphered, it had massive advantages, thousands of clay tablets preserved by fire, and it was successfully shown to encode an early form of Greek, a language with a known living descendant. The decipherers could test their guesses against a vast linguistic family tree. For Rongorongo, that tree was cut down. The culture that created it, with its specific jokes, metaphors, historical references, and spiritual beliefs, is gone. We are outsiders trying to understand an inside joke without knowing the people, the place, or the punchline. Each of these 5 walls stands strong, and together they form a fortress that has, so far, kept its secrets completely intact. Faced with this fortress of silence, a new generation of detectives has arrived, armed not with dusty dictionaries, but with algorithms and raw computing power. These are the statistical sleuths, computational linguists who believe that even a locked door has a shape, and that shape can be measured. Their approach is fundamental. They stop trying to guess what the symbols mean and start analyzing how they behave. By feeding every known Rongorongo inscription into powerful databases, they search for the hidden mathematical fingerprints of a real language. They count everything, how often each specific bird or figure appears, which glyphs tend to follow others, and if certain symbols only show up at the beginning or the end of a line. This is the science of pattern hunting in chaos, and they have found patterns. Clear, non-random structures emerge from the data. Studies have shown that the glyphs are not arranged like a random collection of art, they follow rules. Certain glyphs act like anchors, frequently appearing in prominent positions, perhaps marking the start of a new chant or the name of a chief. Other symbols seem to work in pairs or small sets, suggesting a kind of grammatical glue, maybe equivalent to words like and or of. The most compelling evidence comes from entropy analysis, a method that measures the predictability of a writing system. In a simple list like a calendar, the sequence is highly predictable. You know roughly what comes next. In a phonetic script recording free-flowing speech, the sequence is far less predictable, more chaotic. When researchers ran this test on Rongorongo, the entropy fell somewhere in between. It was not as rigid as a pure list, but not as free as a novel. This finding powerfully supports the idea that the script is not a simple pictographic inventory, but a true writing system capturing language, likely one used for formal, repetitive chants and genealogies. The computers have, in a sense, mapped the skeleton of the script. They have inferred its probable syntax, the bones of its grammar. They can point to a glyph and say, this one behaves like a verb might, or this cluster acts as a frequent phrase. This is a monumental achievement in pure structural analysis, yet it leads to a profound and frustrating frontier. Knowing the grammar of a sentence does not tell you what the sentence says. Imagine you're given a sentence in a completely unknown language passed by a computer. The machine can identify the subject, the verb, and the object based purely on word order and endings. But without a single word of translation, you are left with a perfectly structured ghost. Subject X performed action Y upon object Z. The who, the what, and the why remain complete mysteries. This is the exact cliff edge where statistical decipherment stops. The algorithms have illuminated the script's architecture, proving it is a complex, rule-bound system. But they cannot cross the chasm into meaning. They cannot tell us if that frequently occurring bird glyph represents the god Make, the concept of travel, or the name of a specific star. The messages have a demonstrable form, a verified syntax, but they remain semantically locked, beautiful sentences written in a code where the dictionary was lost forever. Among these statistical maps of the ghost language, one man claimed he could finally see the people moving within it. In the 1950s, German ethnologist Thomas Barthel dedicated his life to Rongorongo, producing what remains the essential tool for all modern research, the Barthel list. This was a systematic catalogue that assigned a number to every distinct glyph across all the known tablets, creating a standardized reference, a kind of periodic table for the script's mysterious elements. After decades of immersion, Barthel made a bold announcement. He had achieved a partial decipherment. His focus was the island's largest text, the magnificent Great Santiago tablet with its over 2,000 symbols. Barthel proposed this was not a calendar or a simple chant, but something far more profound, a royal genealogy. He believed it recorded the sacred lineage of the island's most powerful clan, the Meru, listing generations of chiefs, their wives, and their matings in a grand carved family tree. His method was a clever fusion of symbol and story. He took sequences of glyphs from the tablet and attempted to match them to the names of known chiefs and ancestors preserved in the island's oral histories, which had been collected by early European visitors. For example, if a particular combination of a bird glyph and a geometric shape appeared repeatedly, Barthel might propose it represented a specific chief whose name, according to legend, meant something like frigate bird of the sky. He would then look for that same glyph pair in other contexts, building out a proposed vocabulary of names and titles. It was a deeply imaginative and painstaking effort to breathe life back into the silent wood. Yet for all its ambition, the academic world met Barthel's work with profound skepticism. The central criticism was its subjectivity. There was no objective way to prove that a given squiggle meant a particular name. It relied heavily on Barthel's own intuition and creative leaps. Furthermore, and most damningly, his system could not be consistently applied to unlock other tablets. The interpretations that seemed to fit the Santiago text often fell apart when tried on the Mamre or the Tahua, suggesting he might have crafted a brilliant, bespoke solution for one artifact that did not represent the script's universal rules. Barthel's legacy is thus a haunting paradox. He provided the fundamental numbering system every scholar still uses today, yet his grand decipherment remains an unverified hypothesis, a detailed and beautiful map of a territory we cannot confirm exists. He heard whispers of names in the static, but could never make the whole song clear for anyone else to hear. The search for a foreign key has proven futile, leaving only one place left to look. The true roots of Rongorongo almost certainly lie not across an ocean, but deep within the shared cultural heart of Polynesia itself. To understand the script, we must listen to the echoes of a vast oral tradition. Across the Pacific, from Hawaii to New Zealand, Polynesian cultures perfected the art of memory without writing. They used physical objects as prompts for immense bodies of knowledge. In the Andes, the Inca used the quipu, a complex system of knotted cords, to record numerical data and possibly narratives. While geographically distant, the concept is strikingly similar, a tactile, non-alphabetic system for storing information. Closer to home, the intricate tattoo patterns, or tatau, that covered the bodies of Polynesian chiefs and navigators were not merely decoration. They were a map of identity, encoding lineage, status, and personal history, a story written on the skin. Rongorongo fits perfectly within this world. It is the Easter Island version of this universal Polynesian impulse to make knowledge tangible. The wooden tablets were not books to be read silently, they were instruments for performance. The glyphs likely served as triggers for the sacred chants or karakia that structured Polynesian life. A single, beautifully carved frigate bird might cue an entire stanza of a navigator's prayer, calling upon the bird's spirit for guidance across the empty sea. A sequence of human figures could unlock a genealogy, a wakapopa, chanting the names of ancestors back to the gods who pulled the islands from the deep. This performative theory resolves so many lingering puzzles. It explains why the script was so tightly held by a special class, the Tangata Rongorongo. They were not clerks, they were living libraries, the soloists for whom the tablets were a score. The glyphs provided the set list and the cues, but the full melody, the rhythm, the intonation, and the vast connective tissue of the stories lived in their trained memories. This is why the script died so completely and so quickly when those performers were gone. You cannot learn a symphony from sheet music alone if you have never heard the orchestra. The wood held the notes, but the people were the music. This also clarifies why modern alphabetic decipherment methods hit a wall. We keep looking for a one-to-one code where symbol A equals word B. But if a glyph represents a concept, a name, or an entire poetic line meant to be unpacked in performance, there is no simple translation. It is like trying to translate a musical note into a sentence. The note is part of a larger language of emotion and movement that words can only poorly describe. The script was a sophisticated technology for preserving the soul of a culture, its myths, its history, and its connection to the cosmos, but that technology was fused with human memory. When the last chanter fell silent, the bridge between the symbol and its living meaning collapsed, leaving us with a silent gallery of prompts for songs we can no longer hear. This isolation was not just geographic, it was a crucible for invention. Rapa Nui is the most remote inhabited island on our planet, a speck of land over 2,000 kilometers from its nearest populated neighbor. For the people who lived there, the world beyond the horizon was a myth. This profound solitude forces a radical question about Rongorongo. Was it truly an independent creation? Throughout history, the spark of writing has flared only a handful of times from scratch in Mesopotamia, China, Mesoamerica, and possibly Egypt. Every other known script, from our Roman alphabet to the scripts of India, was borrowed, adapted, or inspired by contact with an existing system. But on Easter Island, there was no one to borrow from. No trader from a literate culture ever sailed into its bays with clay tablets or papyrus scrolls. This leads to a staggering possibility that Rongorongo may be one of the last scripts in human history invented from nothing. A spark of genius struck in total isolation long after the founding canoes had landed. It wasn't brought by Hatu Mata, it was forged by his descendants in their own unique world, and the timing of that invention might be the most tragic clue of all. Some scholars now propose that Rongorongo did not emerge during the island's prosperous early centuries, but in its desperate twilight. Imagine the scene. The great forests that once covered the island are gone, cut down to move the massive stone moai. The soil erodes, bird populations crash, and the once bountiful seas offer less. Society fractures into warring clans, fighting over dwindling resources. In this atmosphere of crisis and collapse, what use is a new writing system? It becomes a tool of survival, but not a physical one. The ruling elite, the priests and chiefs, faced a crumbling world. Their authority, their very history, was under threat. In such chaos, the need for a permanent, unchangeable record becomes urgent. Rongorongo may have been born from this catastrophe as a way to cement power and preserve order. By carving lineage claims onto sacred wood, a chief could make his right to land and resources immutable, a decree from the ancestors themselves. Ritual knowledge, the chants that ensured good harvests or called for rain, could be codified and controlled by a priestly class, becoming a source of immense power in a starving society. The script became a fortress for culture, a last-ditch effort to carve the rules of a dying world into something that would outlast the people themselves. It wasn't a celebration of their culture, it was a desperate attempt to save it from oblivion by turning memory into monument. In this light, the beautiful glyphs are not just art, they are acts of profound defiance against an encroaching darkness, a final, eloquent scream into the silence they knew was coming. That desperate attempt to codify a fading world may have found its ultimate expression in the island's most dramatic surviving tradition. In the late period, as the old order of the moai builders crumbled, a new and ferocious cult rose to power, the Birdmen or Tangata Manu. This was no gentle worship of nature. It was a brutal annual competition for political and spiritual supremacy. And it is here that we find some of the most tantalizing physical links to the Rongorongo script itself. Among the precious few surviving artifacts are not just tablets but ceremonial objects. The most stunning example is the Rei Mairo, a beautiful crescent-shaped wooden pectoral worn as a chest ornament. Several of these crescents are carved not with abstract designs but with rows of genuine Rongorongo glyphs. This is a crucial clue. The script was not hidden away on scholars' shelves, it was worn on the body during rituals. It was active, living, and central to the performance of power. The Birdman ceremony was the island's pivotal yearly event. Each spring, chiefs or their chosen proxies, the athletic hapu, would gather at the sacred village of Orongo, perched on the rim of the volcanic crater Rongorongo. Their gaze was fixed on a trio of tiny islets just offshore, the largest called Matu Nui. The goal was perilously simple: be the first to retrieve the freshly laid egg of the sooty tern. The hapu would scale down the sheer cliff face, plunge into shark-infested waters, and swim over a mile of open ocean to the islet. There they would wait, sometimes for weeks, for the terns to nest. The man who secured the first egg would signal his victory, then swim back carrying the precious prize in a special headband. His patron chief was then declared the birdman, the island's spiritual and political leader for the coming year. This was a ritual of renewal of life snatched from the sea, a desperate gamble to ensure fertility and favor from the gods. When we look at the Rongorongo glyphs through the lens of this ceremony, certain symbols snap into sharper focus. The script is filled with bird figures, but not all birds are the same. The distinctive fork-tail frigate bird glyph appears with striking frequency. In the birdman cult, the frigate bird, or mako, was not the competitor but the sacred observer, a spiritual messenger. The sooty tern itself, the Monu Tara, is also a strong candidate for many of the simpler bird glyphs. And what of those oval or egg-like shapes found throughout the texts? Could they be literal records of the egg retrieval, marking the victor's name or the year of his triumph? It is compelling to speculate that entire tablets or sections of them might be dedicated to the rituals of Orongo, prayers for the hapu's safety, invocations to the bird god Makemake, or the lineage of past birdmen. The script, in this view, becomes the official record of the cult, the sacred charter that legitimized the transfer of power each year. This connection embeds Rongorongo into the last vibrant heartbeat of traditional Rapa Nui society. It suggests the script was not a relic of a bygone golden age, but a living tool used by the very priests who oversaw the island's most important ceremony. The Rei Miro pectoral, carved with glyphs and worn by a chief, transforms from jewelry into a potent badge of office, perhaps inscribed with a protective chant or a declaration of divine right. The silence of the tablets, then, is not just the silence of a lost language, but the silence of a cliffside village after the competitors have plunged into the sea, the quiet tension before the shout of victory. We are left wondering if the last Tangata Rongorongo chanted from these wooden boards at Orongo, using the carved birds to call upon real ones, turning symbol into action in a final, magnificent performance of a culture clinging to the edge of the world. The very mystery that makes Rongorongo so precious also created a lucrative shadow market of lies. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as tales of the undeciphered script spread through museums and private collections, a new kind of artifact began to appear. These were not ancient tablets pulled from caves, but modern creations carved in back rooms and sold to eager buyers. The script's obscurity was its own perfect cover, who could prove a fake when no one could read the real thing. Forgers, often European sailors or settlers with a basic knife and some local wood, saw an opportunity. They would study published drawings of the few authentic glyphs, then cobble them together onto new pieces of wood, creating what looked like lost chapters of the island's history. Their goal was not to advance knowledge, but to exploit the romantic allure of a lost civilization for a quick profit from wealthy collectors and institutions hungry for a piece of the puzzle. This wave of deception did more than just cheat museums. It actively poisoned the well of research. Each new forgery that entered a collection was treated as potential data, another piece of the corpus that scholars would spend years trying to fit into their decipherment models. They were attempting to solve a jigsaw puzzle where cunning hands had slipped in pieces from a completely different box. The most infamous case is likely the so-called Honolulu tablet. This artifact, with its clean, deep carvings, was long considered a key text, yet something about it always felt off to specialists. The glyphs seemed too perfectly copied, like a student's careful tracing, lacking the fluid confidence of a practiced chanter's hand. More damningly, its provenance was murky, appearing decades after the known authentic tablets had been collected, with a vague story of discovery that didn't align with historical records. For years, it sat in a troubling gray area, used in studies but viewed with deep suspicion. It became a ghost in the machine, its data potentially corrupting every statistical analysis it was included in. The forgeries revealed a critical truth: copying the shape of a glyph is easy, understanding its soul is impossible. A skilled carver could replicate the image of a frigate bird perfectly, but without knowing the script's internal grammar, they would place it next to other symbols in combinations that would have been nonsense to a true Tangata Rongorongo. They created grammatical gibberish, beautiful sentences with no syntax. This wasted decades of scholarly effort as researchers chased patterns that were literally meaningless, dead ends manufactured for a paycheck. The legacy of this fraud forces modern scholarship to begin every investigation with a forensic question, not what does it say, but is it real? Today, any potential Rongorongo artifact must pass through a gauntlet of scientific authentication before it joins the precious club of the 25. Experts perform radiocarbon dating on the wood itself, determining if its age aligns with the pre-contact or early contact period. They analyze the species of tree, as the island's native Toromero wood is a strong indicator of authenticity. Under microscopes, they study the tool marks left by the carver, looking for the distinctive signatures of pre-metal obsidian blades, which cut differently than the steel knives brought by Europeans. This rigorous process is a necessary gatekeeper, a way to clear the polluted data pool and ensure that the fragile, silent conversation we are trying to overhear is not interrupted by the loud lies of opportunists. It is a sad but essential chapter in the story, a reminder that the human desire to solve a mystery is sometimes matched only by the desire to profit from one. Even the wood itself holds fragments of a story. While the glyphs remain silent, the physical tablets whisper secrets to those who know how to listen. Modern science has turned its forensic eye on these artifacts, asking not what they say, but what they are made of and how they were made. This is archaeology at its most elemental, and the answers are reshaping our understanding of Rongorongo's timeline. The first clue is in the grain. The vast majority of authentic tablets are carved from the wood of a single, special tree, the Toromero. This small, hardwood tree was once endemic to Easter Island, a vital part of its fragile ecosystem. Its wood was prized, strong enough for tools and ceremonial objects, yet fine-grained enough for intricate carving. Finding a tablet made of Toromero is a powerful indicator of authenticity, linking it directly to the island's pre-contact resources. But not all the wood is local. Some artifacts, like the famous Santiago staff, are made from driftwood, likely from a South American conifer that washed ashore on the island's beaches. This tells a subtle tale of scarcity and adaptation. By the time Rongorongo was being carved, the great forests of Easter Island were likely already gone. The islanders, masters of using what their environment provided, turned to whatever suitable material they could find, whether a carefully cultivated Toromero trunk or a gift from the ocean currents. This resourcefulness underscores the value they placed on these objects. They used the best material available, no matter its source, to pin down exactly when these trees were cut. Scientists have turned to dendrochronology, the study of tree rings. In theory, it is elegant. Each year a tree grows, it adds a ring, and the pattern of thick and thin rings creates a unique fingerprint of wet and dry years. If you have a master chronology for a region, you can match the pattern on an artifact to a specific span of years, dating it with remarkable precision. This has worked wonders for oak timbers in European castles or bristlecone pines in the American Southwest. But for Easter Island's Toromero, the method hits a wall. The island's climate is remarkably stable, with less dramatic seasonal variation to create clearly distinct rings. More critically, the Toromero tree is now extinct in the wild on the island, and no one ever built a master chronology from living trees before they vanished. We are trying to read a barcode without the scanner. Furthermore, the tablets themselves are small, often just fragments of a larger log, providing only a short, ambiguous snippet of the tree's life. While radiocarbon dating can give a broad range of centuries, dendrochronology's promise of a precise year remains, for now, just out of reach. A more revealing line of inquiry looks not at the wood's growth but at the marks left upon it. Under high-powered microscopes, researchers examine the grooves of each glyph. They are searching for the signature of the tool. The original carvers would have used sharp flakes of obsidian, the volcanic glass found on the island. Obsidian fractures to a razor edge, but it is brittle, and it leaves a particular kind of micro-scratch pattern in the wood, different from the cleaner, more durable cut of a metal blade introduced by Europeans. By analyzing these tool marks, scientists can often distinguish a genuinely old tablet from a later forgery. Even more fascinating, this forensic analysis can sometimes reveal the sequence of carving. A master carver might have laid out the entire text in rough form before refining the glyphs, or perhaps they worked line by line. The order of strokes, the depth of cuts, and the overlap of lines can hint at the artisan's technique and confidence. Was this the work of a single, practiced Tangata Rongorongo, or did an apprentice add sections under supervision? These are silent questions, but the wood holds the evidence. This physical detective work will never suddenly make the glyphs legible. It won't tell us the name of a chief or the words of a chant, but what it provides is arguably more foundational, a verified stage upon which the linguistic drama played out. It can confirm that a particular tablet is genuinely from the 17th century, not the 19th. It can prove it was carved with pre-contact tools, placing it firmly in the hands of the original culture. And by sequencing the carving, it might one day show us how a scribe thought, which concepts were grouped together, which glyphs were central, and which were added as modifiers. It builds a biography of the object itself, from the tree that grew in a quiet grove, to the artisan who shaped it with an obsidian blade, to the chanter who held it aloft. We are learning to read the story of the page, even if the words written upon it remain a beautiful, enduring cipher. Yet the tools of the modern age offer a new way of listening to that silent wood. In the digital realm, the fragile tablets are being reborn, not as translations but as perfect, immortal twins. The key technology is high-resolution, three-dimensional scanning. Using lasers and structured light, researchers can now capture every microscopic groove and ridge of a glyph with astonishing precision. This creates a digital model so accurate it can be rotated under virtual light, measured to a fraction of a millimeter, and studied endlessly without a single fingerprint touching the ancient surface. An even more powerful technique is called reflectance transformation imaging. This process involves taking dozens, sometimes hundreds, of photographs of a single object, each with light cast from a different angle. Specialized software then merges these images into one interactive file. On a screen, a scholar can drag a virtual light source across the digital tablet, making shadows flow and highlights shift. This can reveal the subtlest of impressions, tool marks so faint they have been worn smooth to the human eye, or carvings that were later partially erased or overcarved. It is like being able to see the object under every possible sunrise and sunset at once, exposing secrets the original carver assumed would stay hidden in the grain. These digital clones are more than just backups, they are democratizing the mystery. A perfect scan of the great Santiago tablet in a museum in Chile can be downloaded and studied in a lab in Germany, a university in Japan, or by a curious amateur in their own home. The physical barriers of geography and institutional access have dissolved, inviting a global brain trust to examine the same pristine data. But the digital revolution goes beyond mere preservation. It hands the puzzle over to a new kind of intellect, one that thrives on patterns invisible to us. This is where artificial intelligence enters the story. Machine learning algorithms are being trained to look at Rongorongo not with human intuition, but with pure, unbiased statistical power. Think of it this way: a human researcher might spend a lifetime memorizing the placement of a few dozen glyphs. An AI can analyze every single symbol across all 25 tablets in seconds, comparing their positions, their neighbors, and their frequencies against a database of thousands of known writing systems from throughout human history. Its goal is not to guess meaning, but to detect the hidden mathematical skeleton of the script. Could an algorithm identify with cold certainty which glyphs function as proper nouns because they only appear at the start of lines? Could it cluster symbols into families based on shape, suggesting a common root or modifier? Could it find a repeating syntactic pattern, a ghost of a grammatical rule that is too complex for a human to spot? Some projects are doing exactly this, using AI to search for these deep structural fingerprints. The hope is that the machine might see a shadow of logic we have missed, a statistical echo of how language behaves. It offers a data-driven hope, a chance that the breakthrough which has eluded generations of brilliant, frustrated human minds might finally emerge from the silent hum of a processor, finding order in what looks to us like beautiful chaos. This digital arena has become a new battleground of ideas, a place where the quest for meaning has fractured into a dozen competing paths. While artificial intelligence searches for statistical ghosts, human minds are weaving grand narratives from the same silent data. Across the globe, from academic institutions to private studies, a new wave of claimants has emerged, each convinced they have finally heard the whispers in the wood. In Russia, a team of linguists has proposed a theory that echoes the old diffusionist dreams, but with a modern twist. They argue that the symbols of Rongorongo bear a striking, systematic resemblance to the ancient and equally undeciphered script of the Indus Valley civilization, which flourished thousands of miles away in what is now Pakistan and India over 4,000 years ago. Their method involves meticulous side-by-side comparisons, aligning glyphs that look similar and proposing they share a common linguistic root. It is a bold claim, suggesting a prehistoric cultural link across the Indian and Pacific Oceans that would rewrite history. Mainstream scholars, however, remain deeply skeptical. They point out that with hundreds of basic shapes to choose from, finding visual matches between any two pictorial scripts is statistically almost inevitable, a kind of pareidolia on a civilizational scale. Without grammatical or phonetic evidence to bridge the colossal gap in time and space, the theory remains an intriguing visual echo, a pattern seen in the clouds. Far more numerous are the independent researchers, the passionate amateurs and self-taught epigraphers who populate online forums and publish their own e-books. This digital community is fueled by a profound love for the mystery and a deep distrust of what they see as a slow-moving, gatekeeping academic establishment. They operate in a world of open-source collaboration, sharing scans, observations, and wild theories at a dizzying pace. It is here that you find the most dramatic announcements, complete decipherments proclaimed with absolute certainty. One researcher might claim the entire script is a detailed astronomical catalogue, mapping specific stars visible only from Easter Island. Another will argue it is a political manifesto recording a great rebellion. Yet another might see it as a complex set of instructions for traditional navigation or medicine. These theories are often internally consistent and beautifully imaginative, building entire worlds from a handful of glyphs. The problem from a scholarly perspective is methodology. Academia moves through a process of peer review where claims must be tested, evidence must be reproducible, and theories must withstand brutal critique from experts before being accepted. Many independent decipherments, however, start with an assumed answer, a pet theory about the island's history, and then force the glyphs to fit that narrative. They might decide a symbol means water, and then find that symbol in dozens of places, weaving a story about floods, even if the symbol's actual function in the script's grammar suggests it is a verb ending or a personal name. It is the same trap the early diffusionists fell into, but now armed with digital tools and global connectivity. This creates a palpable and often frustrating tension. On one side, you have the rigorous, cautious world of academic epigraphy, which has painstakingly mapped the script's structure but refuses to leap to conclusions about its meaning without ironclad proof. Its progress is slow, incremental, and often unsatisfying to the public craving a solution. On the other side, you have the vibrant, democratized energy of the independent community, bursting with creative solutions but often lacking the disciplinary breaks that prevent fascinating dead ends from being presented as fact. The two worlds talk past each other. Academics dismiss the amateurs as fantastical, while the amateurs accuse the academics of being too timid to see the obvious truth. Yet, in this very conflict lies the script's enduring power. It is a mirror. We look at these cryptic symbols and we see reflected back our own desires, our own ways of thinking. The structuralist sees a grammar, the astronomer sees a star chart, the historian sees a king list, the romantic sees a message from a lost world. Each claimant, in their own way, holds a piece of the puzzle, but it is a puzzle of our own making. The wood remains silent, a blank screen onto which we project our need for a story, proving that the greatest mystery of Rongorongo may not be what it says, but why its silence compels us to speak so loudly on its behalf. But this mirror reflects more than just our own ideas. For the people whose ancestors carved these glyphs, Rongorongo is not a cold academic trophy, it is a living heartbeat. In the modern community of Rapa Nui, a powerful cultural revival is underway, and the ancient script sits at its very center. Here, the glyphs are not seen as a problem to be solved by outsiders, but as a sacred inheritance to be reclaimed. This shift in perspective is profound. Where foreign researchers see an undeciphered code, many Rapa Nui see tangible proof of their ancestors' intellectual and spiritual sophistication, a direct rebuttal to old colonial myths of a primitive island people. The script is a symbol of resilience, a thread connecting them to a past that was almost erased. This connection is being actively woven back into the fabric of daily life. Artists are studying the graceful forms of the glyphs, not to translate them, but to feel their aesthetic power. You can see Rongorongo symbols emerging in stunning contemporary paintings, etched into modern wood carvings, and perhaps most intimately, being inked into skin as tattoos. For a Rapa Nui person choosing to wear a stylized glyph, it is not a fashion statement. It is an act of identity, a permanent reclamation of a visual language that was once nearly lost. It is wearing your history literally on your sleeve. In the island schools, educators are incorporating the script into lessons, teaching children the shapes and the stories of the Tangata Rongorongo. The goal is not to make them linguists, but to instill pride, to show them that their culture produced one of the world's great intellectual mysteries. This re-engagement raises urgent and essential ethical questions that the academic world can no longer ignore. If the script is ever deciphered, who does that knowledge belong to? Is it a global historical discovery, free for all to interpret and publish? Or is it the exclusive cultural property of the Rapa Nui people, a set of ancestral messages that could contain sensitive spiritual or historical truth? Imagine if a team from a foreign university, using advanced software, suddenly announced they had fully translated the great Santiago tablet. They would release the text to the world, analyzing it through their own cultural lens, perhaps reducing sacred chants to dry academic papers. For the Rapa Nui, this could feel less like a discovery and more like a theft, a final colonial extraction of a treasure they have fought for generations to protect. The ethical path forward is one of collaboration, not competition. A growing number of scholars now understand that any legitimate effort to understand Rongorongo must be led, or at the very least co-led, by the Rapa Nui community itself. This means involving Rapa Nui researchers, historians, and cultural practitioners in every step of the process, from designing the studies to interpreting the results. It means respecting that some knowledge, once recovered, might be meant for the community alone, not for global publication. The ultimate goal shifts. It is no longer about winning the decipherment race and claiming a prize. It becomes a shared journey of healing and recovery, an attempt to hand back a piece of a shattered mirror so a people can see a clearer reflection of who they once were and who they are becoming. The silence of the tablets then begins to speak in a new way. It asks us to listen not just for ancient words, but to the living voices of today, who hold the right to decide if and how that silence should ever be broken. The ethical imperative to collaborate leads us directly to a single, unassuming artifact that may hold the key to a more technical breakthrough. Among the scattered survivors of Rongorongo, one object stands out not for its size or beauty, but for the intimate story its surface seems to tell. This is the small Santiago staff, a wooden baton now housed in Chile's National Museum of Natural History. To the casual observer, it is just another stick covered in elegant, mysterious glyphs. But to researchers armed with high-resolution scans and forensic eyes, this staff is a whispering witness. By studying the precise order of the carved strokes, the depth of each line, and the faint ghosts of erased symbols, a compelling theory has emerged. This text may not have been a simple copy from another source. The carver, it appears, was thinking as he worked, composing the message directly onto the wood. The technical term for this detective work is paleographic analysis, the study of ancient writing as a physical act. On the small Santiago staff, scholars have identified what look like hesitations and corrections. In a few places, a glyph seems to have been started, then abandoned mid-stroke, with the carver shifting slightly to begin again. In other sections, there are shallow impressions beneath the final, deep lines, suggesting a first draft was lightly scored into the surface before being permanently incised. Most tellingly, some sequences show signs of erasure, where a symbol was partially or fully scraped away and a new one carved in its place. These are not the actions of a scribe mindlessly replicating a well-known chant from a master tablet. These are the marks of composition, of a mind translating thought into symbol in real time. Imagine you are writing a difficult letter by hand. You might cross out a word, write over it, or leave a smudge where you paused. The Santiago staff bears those same human fingerprints of creation. This changes everything about how we view the script. If the text was being composed during carving, it strongly suggests the glyphs are recording a specific, unique message, not just serving as generic prompts for a memorized performance. The carver was making linguistic choices, arranging symbols to convey a particular set of information. This makes the staff a potential Rosetta Stone not of translation but of process. By analyzing which symbols were changed and what they were changed to, researchers might infer grammatical rules. For instance, if a certain bird glyph was consistently replaced by a human figure when it appeared at the start of a line, that could indicate a syntactic rule about how sentences begin. The mistakes and corrections become a fossilized record of the script's internal logic, a series of choices that reveal what was and was not an acceptable sequence to the writer. It is like listening to someone think out loud as they construct a sentence in a language you don't know. You may not understand the words, but you can hear the grammar taking shape. Consequently, the small Santiago staff has rocketed to the top of the list for intensive, collaborative study. It is no longer just another text. It is a cognitive artifact, a direct interface with the mind of a Tangata Rongorongo from centuries ago. Every microscopic flaw, every altered line is a data point. Modern efforts are now focusing immense computational power on this one object, creating three-dimensional models so precise they can simulate the angle and pressure of the obsidian blade. The goal is to reconstruct, stroke by stroke, the entire creative session. Which glyph was carved first on each line? Where did the carver pause? Did he work from left to right consistently or jump around? The sequence of carving could reveal how the writer grouped ideas, perhaps showing that certain clusters of symbols were added as a single conceptual unit. This staff offers a fragile, fleeting chance to watch over the shoulder of a lost scribe, to see the script not as a static mystery, but as a living language being written into history, one deliberate, correctable cut into wood at a time. Perhaps the most powerful hold Rongorongo has over us is not intellectual but emotional. It is the romantic tragedy of Easter Island itself, a story that reads like a parable for our entire planet. We see a people of incredible ingenuity who built wonders and invented a script, yet who also faced a stark ecological and social collapse, partly of their own making. Their history mirrors our deepest modern anxieties about resource depletion, cultural fragmentation, and survival. The silent tablets become the last testament of that rise and fall, a message carved just before the lights went out. We are drawn to this story because it feels like a warning and a plea, a direct line to a cautionary tale from the past. The script is the central artifact of that drama, the physical proof of a sophisticated mind that grappled with its own world's end. Our fascination is a form of bearing witness, a desire to understand not just a language but a people, and through them, perhaps something about ourselves and our own fragile civilizations. Fundamentally, Rongorongo is the ultimate message in a bottle. Think of the island's isolation, a tiny speck in the greatest ocean on Earth. The people who carved these glyphs knew they were utterly alone. In that context, writing takes on a profound new meaning. It wasn't for trading with neighbors or corresponding with allies, there were none. This script was a conversation across time, a deliberate attempt to speak to the future, to ancestors yet unborn, or maybe even to us. Each tablet is a bottle thrown into the sea of centuries with a note inside we can see but cannot read. We hold the bottle, we study the paper, we see the careful handwriting, but the words are in a cipher. This creates an almost physical ache, a sense of being so close to a revelation yet eternally barred from it. It is a whisper from the past that reaches our ears as static, and we lean in, desperate to catch a single clear word. This taps into the most primal human love for a puzzle. Our brains are wired to seek patterns and solve problems. Rongorongo is the world's most exquisite locked room mystery. The room is Easter Island, the clues are the glyphs, and the suspects, the writers, have vanished. For over 150 years, some of the brightest minds in linguistics, archaeology, and computer science have tried to pick this lock. Each failed attempt doesn't diminish our interest, it heightens it. The script's resistance proves its sophistication, making the ultimate solution feel that much more valuable. It is the intellectual equivalent of a mountain that has never been summited, calling out to every new generation of climbers with the promise of a pristine victory. In an age where Google can translate languages instantly and our eye can generate novels, the fact that this one puzzle, carved on wood, remains unsolved is profoundly humbling. It is a stone in the shoe of modern arrogance, a reminder that there are still doors that our technology cannot kick down, conversations from the past that refuse to be overheard. At its core, the mystery forces us to confront the very nature of writing and the fragility of knowledge. We assume writing is for communication, but Rongorongo suggests it might be for something more elusive, for ritual, for memory, for performance. It challenges our definition of what a writing system even is. More hauntingly, it shows us how quickly and completely knowledge can evaporate. A chain of transmission that lasted for centuries was broken in a single generation by disease and disaster. The tablets are stark monuments to that fragility, proving that even the most carefully carved ideas are mortal if the living culture that sustains them dies. This speaks to a universal human fear, the fear of being forgotten, of our own stories turning to dust. In straining to hear the Rapa Nui, we are also grappling with the silence that awaits all cultures, including our own. So we return to the silent wood, the graceful birds, the solemn figures. The quest to decipher Rongorongo is about more than cracking a code. It is an act of respect, a gesture across an abyss of time. It is the sound of us knocking gently on a door, hoping that someone, anyone, is still there to answer. And in that persistent, hopeful knocking, in our refusal to let the whisper fade completely, we perhaps honor the lost scribes more than we ever could with a perfect translation. We confirm that their message, however opaque, still matters. Their attempt to speak to the future succeeded, not in the way they intended, but in a way they could never have imagined, by making their silent struggle to be remembered the very thing that ensures they never will be. Yet Easter Island's silent library is not alone in its mystery. Scattered across the globe and throughout time, other civilizations have left behind written messages that still defy our understanding. Placing Rongorongo alongside these other great puzzles reveals both the scale of the challenge and what makes this particular script so extraordinary. Consider the Indus Valley script, etched onto seals and tablets from a mighty Bronze Age civilization that thrived in what is now Pakistan and India over 4,000 years ago. With over 400 distinct symbols and no clear descendant language, it remains one of the oldest and most stubborn undeciphered scripts, a complete language from a major urban society that simply vanished. Then there is Linear A, the elegant script of the Minoan civilization on ancient Crete. We actually deciphered its successor, Linear B, which proved to record an early form of Greek. But Linear A, which it evolved from, records a completely different and unknown language, a tantalizing precursor we can see but cannot comprehend. In ancient Iran, the Proto-Elamite script, one of the world's earliest writing systems, stares back at us from clay tablets. And in the Americas, the Isthmian script from Mexico's Gulf Coast, contemporary with the early Maya, holds stories of a culture overshadowed by its famous neighbors. Each of these represents a locked door to a lost world. So what sets Rongorongo apart in this gallery of ghosts? First, its geography. The Indus Valley, Crete, Iran, and Mesoamerica were all hubs of ancient trade and interaction, crossroads where ideas and writing systems could diffuse and influence one another. Rongorongo was born in the most extreme isolation imaginable, on an island that is the most remote inhabited place on Earth. This leads to the second staggering distinction. It may be one of the very few scripts in human history invented completely independently, long after the original settlers arrived. It wasn't borrowed or adapted from a passing trader. It was a spark of genius struck in total solitude. Finally, and perhaps most poignantly, Rongorongo is not a mystery from a completely extinct people. It is directly linked to a living, breathing Polynesian culture, the Rapa Nui, who are actively reclaiming it today. We are not trying to understand the Etruscans or the Minoans, whose cultures dissolved millennia ago. We are trying to understand the direct ancestors of people who are still here, singing, dancing, and carving on the same island. This connection adds a layer of urgency and ethical weight absent from other decipherment quests. Looking at this global context humbles us. The successful decipherments, like Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mayan glyphs, are the rare exceptions, each a monumental achievement that required a perfect storm of luck, brilliance, and a bilingual key. Most ancient scripts remain silent. Rongorongo's persistence reminds us that the default state of history is not knowledge but oblivion. Every decoded message is a miracle against the silence. And in that vast global quiet, the wooden tablets of Easter Island hold a special place, a message sent from the very edge of the world, waiting for a future that might never quite arrive. This profound silence does not come cheap. The quest to decipher Rongorongo is not just an intellectual challenge, it is a massive logistical and financial undertaking. High-resolution, three-dimensional scanners, supercomputers for artificial intelligence analysis, and international teams of experts all require significant funding, a resource often in short supply for niche archaeological research. This raises a starkly modern question. In a world captivated by the mystery, who pays for the search? One obvious source flows directly to the island's shores: tourism. Every year, tens of thousands of visitors make the long journey to Easter Island, drawn primarily by the awe-inspiring moai. Yet for a growing number, the allure goes deeper than the statues. The story of the undeciphered script adds a layer of profound intellectual intrigue. transforming a trip into a pilgrimage to the site of one of history's greatest unsolved puzzles. This curiosity has tangible economic value. Could a portion of the revenue generated by this mystery tourism be intentionally funneled back into serious research? Imagine a small, transparent surcharge on flights or park entries specifically earmarked for the Rongorongo Research Initiative, managed in partnership with the Rapa Nui community. This would create a direct, virtuous cycle where the mystery funds its own investigation, and every visitor becomes a patron of the quest. It aligns global fascination with local benefit, turning passive interest into active participation. The funds could support training for Rapa Nui epigraphers, purchase new scanning equipment for the island's museum, or fund collaborative international conferences. It is a model of sustainable research powered by the very wonder the script inspires. Yet the digital age offers even more unconventional and controversial avenues. We possess perfect three-dimensional digital twins of these priceless artifacts. What if those scans were not just for study, but for support? Enter the contentious world of non-fungible tokens, or NFT. The concept is provocative. Mint a limited series of unique digital collectibles based on the high-resolution scans of the most famous tablets, like the Great Santiago staff or the Tahua tablet. Each NFT sale would generate direct funding for the research consortium. Proponents argue this is a brilliant modern solution. It leverages blockchain technology to create a new global community of micro-patrons. An art lover in Tokyo or a crypto enthusiast in Berlin could own a verifiable piece of the mystery, a digital fragment of history, with their purchase directly funding the scientists trying to solve it. It would generate buzz far beyond academic circles, pulling the puzzle into the zeitgeist and engaging a tech-savvy generation that museums often struggle to reach. The potential for raising significant capital quickly is undeniable. However, the cons are profound and deeply ethical. This path risks the ultimate commodification of cultural heritage. Reducing a sacred text, a vessel of ancestral identity, to a tradable digital asset feels to many like a profound violation. It could be seen as the final stage of colonial extraction, not of the physical wood, but of its digital soul, packaged and sold to the highest bidder. Who truly owns the rights to monetize these scans? The museums that house the physical objects, the Chilean state, or most rightfully the Rapa Nui people themselves, for whom these are not puzzles but patrimony. There is also a practical risk. The volatile, speculative world of cryptocurrency could tarnish the scholarly gravitas of the project, associating a sacred quest with market hype and financial speculation. The backlash from both the academic community and the Rapa Nui could be severe, potentially severing the very trust needed for collaborative research. The core dilemma is laid bare. Does the urgent need for resources justify turning a cultural treasure into a commodity, even a digital one? Can you sell pieces of the mystery to pay for solving it without selling out the very people at its heart? This tension frames the decipherment effort as a project existing in two worlds. It demands the slow, meticulous rigor of peer-reviewed science, the patience of linguistics, and the deep respect of cultural anthropology. Yet it also requires the fuel of the modern world, sustainable financial support, broad public engagement, and innovative thinking. Balancing these needs is the new frontier of the mystery. The ideal path likely lies in a hybrid model, one that prioritizes ethical partnership above all. Any fundraising, whether through traditional tourism levies or cutting-edge digital campaigns, must be co-created and co-governed with the Rapa Nui community from the outset. The goal is not just to extract funds from global interest, but to channel that interest into a form of respectful stewardship. Perhaps the answer is not selling the scans, but selling the story, creating immersive educational experiences or certified digital replicas that come with a clear explanation of how the purchase supports local scholars and conservation. The funding question ultimately circles back to the script's own silent lesson. Preservation is not a one-time act, but a continuous collective effort. How we choose to fund the search for its voice may reveal just as much about our own values as any translation ever could. Perhaps the true power of Rongorongo lies not in a future translation, but in its permanent silence. What if we never decipher it? This is not a concession of defeat, but a profound philosophical challenge. What is the value of a message we can never read? The answer may be that the script's greatest gift is its indecipherability itself. By refusing to yield its secrets, Rongorongo performs a final, elegant act of preservation. It stands forever as an irrefutable monument to the intellectual sophistication of the Rapa Nui people. We do not need to know the words to recognize the genius in the structure, the clear evidence of a complex symbolic system born in isolation. This silent testimony is more powerful than any translated king, list, or chant because it cannot be debated, simplified, or misunderstood. It is pure proof of a mind at work, a civilization that grappled with the same fundamental human urge to record, to communicate, to make thought permanent. In its stubborn silence, the script becomes a guardian of its own culture's dignity, protecting it from being picked apart and analyzed through an outsider's lens. Imagine if we could suddenly read every tablet. The sacred chants might become academic footnotes, the genealogies dry data points, the myths reduced to comparative literature. The mystery preserves the sacredness, allowing the wood to remain a vessel of awe rather than a solved problem. It forces us to approach with humility, to acknowledge that some conversations from the past are not meant for us to overhear in full. This enduring enigma also holds up a mirror to the limits of our own knowledge. In an age of instant information, Rongorongo is a stubborn reminder of how much we do not know and will never know. It represents the countless voices, stories, and entire worldviews that have been irrevocably lost to time, not with a bang but with a whisper. Every civilization leaves behind more silence than speech. This script is a tangible emblem of that vast, universal quiet, a single known fragment of an infinite library of the lost. Its persistence as a puzzle after all our technological advances is a lesson in intellectual humility. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, its undeciphered state allows it to function as a living, powerful symbol of cultural endurance for the Rapa Nui people. It is not a closed book from a dead culture, but an open question at the heart of a living one. The mystery invites engagement, reinterpretation, and reclamation on their own terms. It becomes a symbol not of failure, but of resilience, a cultural treasure that defies final ownership by outsiders. So while the quest to understand will and should continue, there is a beautiful integrity in the silence. Rongorongo may have always been a message to the future, but not in the way we assumed. Its message is not in the meaning of the glyphs, but in their very existence and their lasting mystery. It tells us clearly and without words that here was a people of profound creativity, that their thoughts mattered enough to carve into wood, and that some echoes from the past are meant to resonate, not to be explained away. The future of this quest is no longer a solitary pursuit. It demands a new kind of conversation, one that bridges the digital and the ancestral. The coming decade will not be defined by a lone genius in a library, but by a global network of minds. This is the blueprint for a truly collaborative assault on the silence, a model built on 4 pillars. First, computational linguistics will continue its tireless work, using ever more sophisticated artificial intelligence to map the script's hidden grammar and identify statistically improbable patterns that human eyes miss. Second, advanced imaging technologies like even higher resolution 3-dimensional scanning and multispectral analysis will peer deeper into the wood, revealing tool marks and faded glyphs we cannot yet see. Third, the deep expertise of Polynesian linguists and cultural historians is essential, providing the vital context of related languages, oral traditions, and shared mythological motifs across the Pacific. And fourth, most critically, the traditional knowledge and guidance of the Rapa Nui community themselves must lead the way. They hold the cultural keys, the intuitive understanding of how their ancestors thought about the world, which no algorithm can ever replicate. Imagine a unified digital platform, a global Rongorongo database. This would not be a closed academic archive, but an open, living repository. It would house perfect digital twins of every authenticated artifact, alongside digitized recordings of every known oral history, early missionary accounts, and centuries of botanical and ecological data from the island. Advanced analysis tools would be built directly into this platform, allowing a researcher in Norway, a cultural expert on Rapa Nui, and a student in Chile to examine the same glyph cluster simultaneously, annotate it with their theories, and see each other's work in real time. This transparency would break down the silos that have hampered progress for generations, turning competition into cooperation. The romantic notion of a sudden, dramatic decipherment, a single scholar shouting Eureka as the entire script falls into place, is almost certainly a fantasy. The reality will be far more gradual and in many ways more profound. The breakthrough will likely be a slow, painstaking accumulation of tiny, verified insights. A computational linguist might prove with 99.9% certainty that a specific glyph functions as a verb marker. A Rapa Nui elder, hearing that, might recall a family chant where a similar sound appears in that grammatical position. An imaging specialist might then discover that same verb marker glyph is always carved with a distinctive double stroke on a particular class of tablets. These small, interlocking discoveries, each validated across disciplines, will slowly build a scaffold of understanding. One day, we may not have a full translation of the great Santiago tablet, but we might confidently understand its opening line as a formal invocation to the ancestors, its middle section as a record of a specific harvest ritual, and its closing as a genealogical list. This is a future that requires immense patience and persistent goodwill. It asks academics to share data before publication, to value cultural intuition as highly as statistical proof. It asks the global community of independent researchers to channel their passion into this collaborative framework, testing their ideas against this shared evidence. And it asks the world to support this slow, respectful work, understanding that the goal has shifted. We are no longer just trying to crack a code. We are trying to reassemble a conversation, to rebuild a bridge of understanding between a vibrant living culture and the eloquent silence of its own past. The true Eureka, a moment may not be when we finally read the words, but when we finally learn how to listen. That journey from a bishop's desk to the cutting edge of artificial intelligence spans a century and a half of human curiosity. We began with a tragic discovery, a library of wooden texts found only after the last of its librarians had vanished into history. We followed the grand, flawed theories that tried to link these glyphs to Egypt or lost continents, and we saw the slow, humbling realization that this script was a defiantly independent creation, born in the most extreme isolation on Earth. We watched as modern science, from statistical analysis to three-dimensional scanning, mapped the ghostly skeleton of its grammar, proving it was a true writing system while the soul of its meaning remained locked away. We witnessed the passionate, often conflicting efforts of scholars, forgers, and the Rapa Nui people themselves, for whom these symbols are not a puzzle but a profound inheritance. Rongorongo is far more than a code waiting to be broken. It is a breathtaking testament to human creativity, a spark of genius struck on a remote island that proves the urge to write, to make thought permanent, is a universal human flame. It is also a monument to profound cultural loss, a silent witness to how quickly and completely a world can fade, leaving behind only beautiful, baffling echoes. This mystery is very much alive. It lives in the digital scans being analyzed by algorithms across the globe. It lives in the hands of Rapa Nui artists who carved the ancient forms into new wood. And it lives right here in this conversation. Look at the glyphs for yourself. Let your own mind wander across those elegant birds and solemn figures. Learn about Rapa Nui not as a tragic parable, but as a living culture with a past of incredible ingenuity and a future it is actively shaping. Some secrets of the past guard their silence fiercely, not to frustrate us, but to teach us a deeper kind of listening. They challenge us to appreciate the fragility of knowledge, to respect the stories that can still be told, and to approach history not as a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be honored. What do you see when you look at Rongorongo? Share your own theories and thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to join more adventures into history's greatest enigmas, be sure to subscribe. The conversation with the past is just beginning.